It's quite a long sort of a journey. When I was in college, I was studying literature in Delhi University, and my uncle is a national award-winning documentary filmmaker based out of Delhi, and he used to also write a lot of screenplays that he would, every year enter into NFDC. NFDC used to have a script contest every year. So I remember one afternoon I was in his house and he had a lot of books and I chanced upon the screenplay and as I started reading the screenplay, I was fascinated by the idea that, as a human being can conceptualize and create a movie. Because so far I was just a viewer, right? I was a viewer of, let's say, Amitabh Bachchan or maybe some English films and whatever, Rambo and all that. But suddenly to understand that a human being can put on paper everything that actually happens on screen, which we take for granted, that whole idea really fascinated me immensely. And this whole, the germ of wanting to create cinema came into me. And then I started reading a lot about, every filmmaker. Then I discovered Satyajit Ray's cinema, and that again changed my whole perception of what a director does. And while doing all of that, I was writing a lot. I was into literature, and I was also assisting my uncle. I would go on shoots, and he had a 16mm camera that I used to sort of handle, in terms of just maintain it and set it up for the cameraman. So there was always this natural affinity towards the camera, which just kept developing. But I never wanted to be a cinematographer per se. I wanted to be a director, but I wanted to be a director. I wanted to emulate masters like Ray, who knew intricately, who knew the work of every department. Definitely, cinematographically, they're all. See, it's almost I can use the similarity to, let's say, cricket today. Cricket has different formats. There's Test cricket. There's one-day cricket, there's T20 cricket. This is again very much similar to that, Like a feature film is like a test match because it's a longer length, the whole rhythm of the narrative is different. The environment in which a film audience is, sort of the way the film audience grasps a narrative is very different from how a TV audience grasps a narrative. Because you have to understand that you have got a guy to come in and sit in a space that does not belong to him. He's sitting there with many other people, so there's a collective energy and a consciousness, and it's dark. You've pretty much told him to switch off his cell phone. You've made sure that he is not going to get distracted by other things. So that entire environment is very conducive for him to get sucked into a long narrative, into a story about other people that can stretch for a duration. So as a filmmaker, there are lots of things that you feel empowered that you can get away with or you can do. Like I am of the belief that as a filmmaker, the first 5 to 10 minutes, it's almost like you can sort of ease an audience into a film. You don't necessarily have the pressure that, scene number 1 only you have to get him. It's okay, you can sort of bring him in. Whereas now in the shorter formats, like for instance advertising is very, it's driven by the product. So the creative of an advertising is always trying to balance great creative, which is great storytelling or anything that is mind-blowing from a creative person's point of view. It's trying to balance that with communication, because the main agenda is communication. So you're constantly trying to do this fight of that, okay, I need to communicate this and this. Now what are the nuances I can bring in as a filmmaker into it? And that in itself is very challenging. And also the time duration to be able to tell a story with great economy and paucity, that's a huge skill, It's almost like a T20 batsman who can suddenly can score at 10 runs and over, whereas in Test match cricket, he is expected to go at 3.5 runs and over. So those are the similarities. The basic core skill set is the same, which is that there is a craft, there is camera, there is editing, there is art direction, there's acting. So all those basic things remain the same, but your approach as a filmmaker or a cinematographer needs to change. As a filmmaker, definitely. As a cinematographer, maybe not that much, because you're still telling, like I would look at an ad film as one scene, whereas a feature film is probably about 80 scenes or 70 scenes. So as a filmmaker, that's how I would dissect it, saying, okay, this is just one scene out of, in my head I will imagine what is the backstory, what is the post story, and that will help me in characterization. But predominantly I know that this is a scene that I'm filming, and how can I economically film it, and can this have humor, can this have drama, can this just be an audiovisual piece. Music videos, on the other hand, is, I think, it's a very free format, and I think music videos they're the best format for a cinematographer coming through the ranks, because you're not stuck down to narrative, you're not stuck down to conventional storytelling. You can do something very abstract, you can do great photography, you can stitch together a number of really abstract visuals and create a feeling that sort of synchronizes with the music. So it's a very liberating, that's a very, very liberating format, and I wish, I mean, it sort of died down to a great degree because there's no economics to it, but I can see that a lot of music labels are now reviving the idea of a single and a music video. Very recently, in fact, with T-Series, I directed a music video for Ayushman Khurrana. It was a Punjabi song, and I was asking Bhushan, why is he just releasing one single? But the whole, now it seems that what music companies are doing is, the music business is basically ringtones, and again YouTube hits. So you don't need to produce a whole album, you just cut one single and you make a nice video to it. YouTube hits will ensure that it's obviously circulating, and the ringtone also business will also work. So it's a great new model. So I think that the music video format is going to get revived again in a probably a big way, if I can see it coming. Yeah, well, it depends on where you view, because see, you could take a look at something you did 10 years back and feel a sense of having failed at something. But maybe at that particular moment, that is the best I mean, whether it was your skill set or it was your thinking, but that is possibly at that point the best you could have sort of done. I think Sarkar Raj, which was the sequel to Sarkar, that is the one film where I felt that everything that I visualized and envisaged, I managed to get that closest to, you always, with every piece of work, when you get very intense and involved with it, you leave it at the point, obviously, that point of release, you somehow have to let it go. You could have perfected it a bit, maybe you could have, one more print, you could have, fine-tuned it a little bit more. So there is always a sense of feeling like you've left the work, abandoned it and not perfected it. With Sarkar Raj, I felt that is the work that's my most perfect work. I don't look at it and there's not anything that I look at in that film and I cringe. There's nothing in that film that I'm embarrassed of. There are lots of scenes in Sarkar that I'm really embarrassed of. But obviously a lot of people don't understand why I'm embarrassed of it. Like there was this one instance where so we were shooting Mr. Bachchan. In the original film, he sits out in this veranda where he meets people, and so we had decided that a lot of his scenes will be there. So I thought that it's going to be very boring to just have him out in the veranda. So I told the art department to put this grill on top, which had a sort of a checkered pattern, and I thought it would be interesting to just have. And we were shooting in, I think in September, October, so pretty much dead top sun in Bombay, hard sun. So my idea was to get this checkered sort of pattern on people's faces and all that. But what used to happen is that the house that we were shooting in was situated in such a way that, you know, it was west facing. So what would happen is till about 11 o'clock the sun will not come to a position where it could get through. But obviously we couldn't wait till 11:30 every day, so I had to figure out a device. So what I did is, on top of the building I put a series of mirrors and I deflected the sun, which was on the east. I would deflect it like this back into that area. Now what happens is, you put up all these big mirror reflectors, you know, no matter how much you center them and tie it, little bit wind will also shake them, okay. So I remember this one particular scene where, and it was a beautiful take for performance and everything, and I saw that thing was shaking, so that pattern was constantly going here and there. So after we finished the take, I went up to Ramuji and I said that, sir, can we do one more take? He said, why? He said, this performance is so good. I said, no sir, this thing was shaking and it looks so tacky, and you know, everybody will know that the light is shaking. So he said, don't worry Amit, you know, I'll put sound of some wind and people think it's just a tree. And it's so interesting that later I remember a friend of mine who watched the film, she called me and she said, I just love the way, you know, that leaf was shaking on him. So, I mean, that was a mistake, but sometimes you get lucky when your mistakes become, people start looking at your mistakes as some new sort of edgy thing that you've done. So that's part of cinema life, I suppose. It's very, very important, because what happens is, see, a film festival is an event that sort of brings in this film festival, for instance, they've been endeavoring to bring a lot of filmmakers from different places, and it becomes a great platform to share ideas, you know, for a filmmaker from somewhere else to come in and share his experience. And when you have a young, nascent sort of population of film students or film enthusiasts, this is just like the kind of injection that they need, you know, it's just the kind of enthusiasm that they need to, you know, I'm sure that a lot of people, a lot of the film enthusiasts will go back home from this, and they'll feel rejuvenated and they'll feel inspired to do something. So I just feel that film festivals always create energy. It just creates, enthuses people, you know, it just sort of puts everybody in under one platform, and a lot of times you probably interact with your heroes. Like, I'm sure yesterday must be a great session because Raju Hirani was here, and then so a lot of young aspiring filmmakers would have asked him a lot of questions, and they would have gained a lot of inspiration from him. So yeah, I think it's great. I just feel that this festival should get bigger, and it should, you know, it should become larger, and with time I'm sure it will. I've only been here now for about 20 hours, and yeah, I mean, there's so much warmth, and there's obviously, I mean, I met with a lot of the short filmmakers who the finalists on the short film contest, and they're all so hungry and they're all brimming with ideas. So I've really so far enjoyed my stay here, and I wish I could have been here longer, but it's a very short stay. But would love to come back to Assam another time, maybe just, you know, travel around a bit. Yes, last night there was a little cruise we took on the Brahmaputra. There was a dinner, but of course we couldn't get to see much. But would love to really explore it, you know, because being in Bombay, we are so cut off from this part of the country that we just don't get to explore it, and there's just so much great things to explore this part of the world.